Hey everyone! Today, one of our viewers shared an incredible experience that will leave you speechless. Let's dive in. My name is Caroline, and I never imagined that my career as a journalist would lead me to an experience beyond life itself. On February 7th, 2025, my world changed forever. A horrific accident left me clinically dead for 13 minutes. But in those moments, I saw things that shattered everything I thought I knew. I crossed over, leaving my broken body behind, and stepped into a realm beyond human understanding. What I witnessed will stay with me forever. Jesus, the truth about prayer, a warning about what's coming. I have to share this because the world needs to know. It was a warm September morning, the kind where the air still carried the last whispers of winter. Just another day in the life of a journalist. Deadlines, research, chasing leads. I had spent years investigating corruption, government secrets, and global affairs, but nothing could have prepared me for the truth I was about to uncover. That day, I was set to interview an energy analyst who had been warning about an impending oil crisis. He claimed OPEC was making moves that would shake the U.S. energy sector, yet no one was paying attention. My research had uncovered whispers, political meetings behind closed doors, shifting market trends, warnings that never reached the public. It all felt urgent, but I had no idea how urgent until that afternoon. I was running late, the roads were packed, my mind racing through the questions I had prepared. And then, everything changed. I never saw the truck coming. It ran a red light at full speed, slamming into the driver's side of my car. The impact was brutal. A split second of pain, the shattering of glass. And then, silence. The world around me slowed, as if time itself had warped. My breath caught. My vision darkened. And then, I was gone. At first, I didn't feel fear. No panic, no struggle. Just a strange floating sensation, as if I were being gently pulled from my body. I saw myself, crushed in the wreckage, paramedics shouting, their hands pressing against my lifeless frame. But I wasn't there. I was somewhere else. I had died. The moment my heart stopped, I felt a pull. Not a yank, but an inevitable drift. There was no sound, no weight, just movement, as if I were being carried by an invisible force. Then, darkness. But it wasn't the kind of darkness that brings fear. It wasn't emptiness. It was something else. A space beyond time. No pain, no thoughts, just an overwhelming awareness that I existed beyond my body. It was peaceful, but eerie. And then, light. Not sudden, but growing like a distant sunrise. Warmth surrounded me, a presence beyond words. I knew, without being told, that this light wasn't just light. It was alive. And it knew me. Every memory, every hidden thought, every moment of my life laid bare. Yet, there was no judgment. Only a deep, unexplainable love. The light welcomed me, drawing me forward. Then, I saw them, beings of pure radiance, unlike anything on earth. They didn't speak, but I understood them. They guided me deeper into this realm. And then, I heard the voice. Not just any voice. A voice that resonated through my entire being. It wasn't just sound. It was truth itself. And in that moment, I knew exactly who it was. Jesus. Before I saw him, I passed through something else. A vast, silent space that stretched into infinity. It wasn't frightening, but it felt endless. As if I had stepped into the pause between two realities. Time didn't exist here. No yesterday, no tomorrow. Just now. And then I started to see. At first, shadows. Then, patterns. It was like reality itself was forming before my eyes. Shapes, colors beyond human perception. Energy moving like waves in an ocean. And within that energy, I saw threads. Lines stretching across time, connecting moments, choices, lives. And then I realized something that shook me to my core. Every thought, every word, every action, they all sent ripples through these threads. Nothing is isolated. Everything we do affects everything else. This is only the beginning of Caroline's story. What she witnessed beyond life itself holds powerful revelations, truths about prayer, the unseen impact of our choices, and a warning for the world. What do you think? Would you want to hear more? Let us know in the comments below. Prayers move through these threads, weaving unseen connections across time and space. Acts of kindness rippled outward, reaching places and hearts beyond anything we could imagine. And then, I saw the warnings. Something was happening on Earth. Something massive. It wasn't just political or economic. It was spiritual. A shift was coming. A battle for control. Not just over physical energy, but over spiritual power itself. And those who weren't prepared, they would be caught in the storm. I knew this knowledge wasn't meant for me alone. I had to share it. But before I could even ask what it all meant, the light around me intensified. And that's when I saw him. The moment I saw Jesus, everything else faded. He wasn't just standing before me. He was everything: light, presence, truth. I could barely comprehend him, yet I understood him completely. His eyes held eternity, yet in that moment, he saw only me. "Caroline," he said. Hearing my name from him, it was as if I was hearing it for the first time. As if he wasn't just calling me, but speaking to the deepest part of my soul. The part that had existed long before I was born. "I have something to show you," he said. And suddenly, I was moving, not walking, not flying, just moving. Space itself shifted around us, and in an instant, I saw Earth, but not as I had ever known it. It was alive. Streams of energy covered the planet, flowing like rivers, some strong, some weak, some broken. And then, I saw it, a darkness. It spread like a shadow, overtaking the world. And at its core, oil. The US oil industry had been struck, not just financially, not just politically, spiritually. A decision had been made, and the consequences would ripple across the entire planet. It wasn't about money. It was about control. Then Jesus spoke, words I will never forget. The world is about to change, and they are not ready. My mind raced. Who were they? What did this mean? How could we prepare? Jesus turned to me. "Tell them." And just like that, I began to fall, back through the dimensions, back through the void, back into the broken body I had left behind. The next thing I knew, I was gasping for air, in a hospital bed. I had been gone for 13 minutes, but what I had seen would stay with me forever. The moment I saw Jesus, I knew no words could ever fully capture what I felt. His presence wasn't just something I saw, it was something I experienced. He radiated love, wisdom, and authority. Yet at the same time, there was a gentleness about him that made me feel completely safe. He wasn't just in front of me, he was everywhere. The air, the light, the warmth, it all came from him. When he looked at me, I felt stripped of every facade, every insecurity. He saw everything, my past, my fears, my doubts, and yet, I wasn't ashamed. I was known, and still, completely loved. His gaze held eternity, yet in that moment I felt like the only person who existed. "Caroline," he said again, hearing him say my name. It was like he was speaking to the very core of me. A part of my soul that had always known him, even before my earthly life began. I wanted to speak, but no words came. It didn't matter. He already knew. "You must see," he said. And in an instant, everything changed. The light, the warmth, the endless expanse. It all shifted. Suddenly, I was seeing the earth again, but not like before. It was alive, pulsing, vibrating with unseen energy. Streams of light crisscrossed continents, cities, oceans. I could see it all. Every act of love, every prayer, every decision. Sending ripples through these lines, connecting lives in ways I had never imagined. Then, I saw something darker. Some of the energy streams were dim, tangled, severed. They were being disrupted, but not by natural forces, by something else. Forces of greed, deception, control. And at the center of it all, I saw oil. It wasn't just a commodity. It was a stronghold. And something had just happened that would shift everything. I saw it as if I were standing outside of time. The world I had known was changing, not just politically, not just economically, spiritually. Jesus lifted his hand, and suddenly I saw a massive conference table. World leaders sat around it, deep in discussion. Something urgent was happening, and I knew this was just the beginning. This decision would change the world forever. Tension filled the room. The faces around the massive conference table were grim, their voices heavy with unspoken consequences. OPEC had made its move. And that move would cripple the U.S. oil industry indefinitely. But this wasn't just about energy. It was about power. This wasn't another temporary oil crisis or a passing shift in supply and demand. This was permanent. A restructuring of global dominance that would leave the U.S. struggling under the weight of economic collapse. Industries would falter. Markets would crumble. A new world order was emerging. Nations that once followed would now lead. The U.S., once a superpower, would be forced into submission as others seized control. But then, Jesus showed me something even deeper. The real forces behind this decision. These world leaders, they weren't the masterminds. They were just pawns in a much larger, unseen battle. Darkness had already infiltrated their discussions, influencing their choices without them even realizing it. What looked like a strategic economic decision was actually a carefully orchestrated event, planned long before these leaders ever took their seats at the table. I felt sick. This wasn't just politics. This was a spiritual war. The effects of this decision wouldn't be instant, but they would be unstoppable. Cities would darken, businesses would collapse. Ordinary people, the innocent, would suffer. And yet, even through the coming chaos, there was still light. Jesus turned to me and spoke, "The world is about to change, but those who seek truth will find the way." I had spent years reporting on politics, economics, and world affairs, but nothing could have prepared me for what I saw next. OPEC's decision wasn't just about reducing supply. It was a calculated move to eliminate the U.S. as an oil superpower. Jesus showed me a map. Oil reserves across America were drying up, but not because they didn't exist, because access to them was being restricted. Laws, political maneuvers, trade agreements, environmental policies. Every single move had been deliberate. The U.S. oil industry wasn't just failing. It had been set up to fail. Pipelines were being blocked, refineries were shutting down, and the push for alternative energy? It wasn't a solution. It was a distraction. The real power was shifting elsewhere. Then I saw something even more disturbing. While America struggled, a new alliance was forming. Countries that had once been divided were now uniting against the West, using energy as a weapon. Gasoline prices soared, the economy destabilized, protests erupted, people begged for answers, governments scrambled for solutions. But this was no accident. It had been set in motion long before anyone realized it. And then Jesus showed me the true battle behind it all. This wasn't just about oil. It was about control. Because if you control energy, you control everything: transportation, food production, economies, even war itself. But the forces at play weren't just after oil, they were after souls. Jesus looked at me and said, "This is the deception. They will make the world believe it is about resources, but it is about something much greater. They have turned their eyes from the truth." Then he showed me what was coming next. As I stood beside him, I saw beyond the physical world, into the spiritual realm. The war over oil was just a reflection of a much greater battle, one that had been raging for centuries. Above the earth, I saw beings of light and darkness clashing. Their battle was unseen by human eyes, yet it influenced every decision being made below. The leaders believed they were in control, but in reality, they were the ones being controlled. There were whispers in their ears, suggestions planted in their minds. Some of them were completely unaware, but others, those who had willingly aligned themselves with the darkness, had exchanged their souls for influence. Then, Jesus allowed me to hear their conversations. "They will believe what we tell them," one of them said. "They will fight over what does not matter, while we take what does." This was never just about economies. It was about faith. Because when people are desperate, when they are afraid and struggling, they stop praying. They stop seeking truth. Instead, they turn to governments, to policies, to temporary solutions, and in their desperation, they will accept anything, even total control over their lives. Jesus turned to me, his expression solemn, yet still full of love. "This is why you must tell them." They think they are watching a war between nations, but this is a war for souls. The weight of it all hit me. How could I possibly explain this? How could I make people see what was really happening beneath the surface? But Jesus wasn't finished. "There is hope," he said, "but they must wake up." And with that, the vision shifted again. I stood before him, my mind racing. Everything I thought I knew about the world had just been shattered. For years, I had worked as a journalist, uncovering hidden truths, exposing corruption, following the facts. But nothing had prepared me for this. Jesus knew my thoughts before I could even speak. His expression was both gentle and firm. He wasn't showing me these things to scare me. He was preparing me. "You must understand," he said. "This has been in motion for a long time. The world only sees what is placed before them, but the true battle has always been in the unseen." His voice carried a weight of authority that sent chills through my soul. Then he lifted his hand, and suddenly I saw glimpses of the future. I saw oil reserves being manipulated, vast supplies hidden away while people suffered. I saw governments deceiving their own citizens, creating artificial shortages to push an agenda. People were desperate, their hope fading as the world around them collapsed. Then, another image. Massive blackouts. Entire cities plunged into darkness. No electricity, no fuel, no way to travel. People stranded, confused, terrified. The air was thick with anxiety, and everywhere I looked, I saw despair. Jesus turned to me. "They will use this to control the people," he said. "When a man is hungry, he will listen to anyone who promises him food. When a nation is desperate, it will submit to whoever offers a solution." My heart pounded. The plan was clear. Create the crisis, then offer the solution at a cost. Jesus continued, "Many will be deceived. They will think they are choosing safety, but they are choosing chains." I wanted to cry out, to ask how people could escape this fate. But before I could speak, he placed his hand on my shoulder. "There is still time," he said, "but they must wake up now." The visions continued. I saw mighty nations trembling, economies collapsing like houses of cards. What once seemed unshakable was now crumbling before my eyes. The United States, once a global superpower, was struggling to stand. Industries failing, the government fractured, the people divided. I saw protests, riots, desperation filling the streets, and at the same time, I saw other nations rising, not through strength, through manipulation. They had planned for this, they had waited patiently, and now they were stepping into the void left behind. Then I saw something even more shocking. World leaders, former enemies, were now standing together, forming alliances that no one had expected. They weren't just working against the US, they were working towards something much greater. A new global system. Jesus turned to me. Do you understand now? I nodded, my throat dry. The world is changing, he continued, not by accident, but by design. Those who control the resources will control the nations. Those who control the nations will control the people, and those who control the people will decide the fate of the world. A chill ran through me. This wasn't just about oil, it was about who would hold power over humanity itself. Jesus turned toward the earth again. I followed his gaze. I saw the people, millions of them, going about their daily lives, unaware of what was coming. Some sensed that something was wrong. They felt the shifts, the instability, but they didn't know what to do. Others were completely blind, trusting their leaders, their governments, believing that if they just waited, things would get better. Jesus shook his head. They must not wait. They must prepare. I felt the urgency in his words. But how? I asked. How can they be ready for what's coming? His answer was simple. They must return to me. And then I saw something incredible. I saw people waking up, not physically, spiritually. Families gathering to pray, people seeking truth, breaking free from the deception. And as they did, I saw light beginning to push back the darkness. Darkness loomed, but Jesus continued. The days ahead will test their faith. Many will fall into fear, but those who seek truth will find strength. Those who pray will be protected. Those who prepare will endure. And then I saw it. Communities forming, not relying on governments, but on each other. People growing their own food, learning skills long forgotten. I saw them stepping away from the systems of control, creating something new, a way to survive, free from those who sought to enslave them. Jesus turned to me one last time. Tell them the time is short. My heart ached. Would they listen? Would they believe? Then the vision shifted again. I found myself once more in his presence, and for the first time, I felt the full weight of everything I had seen. I thought about those who would hear my message. Would they understand? Would they dismiss it as just another warning, another conspiracy? Jesus smiled gently. Not all will listen, but some will. And then he showed me the power of prayer. I saw people praying, not just in churches, but in their homes, in the streets, in hidden places. Their prayers weren't just words, they were shields. Every sincere prayer created a barrier against the darkness. Every cry for help sent waves of light into the world. Jesus explained, many believe prayer is just speaking into the air, but it is far more. It is a direct connection to the kingdom of heaven. It strengthens, it protects, it changes the very fabric of reality. Then, he showed me something even more incredible. I saw a future where those who prayed were spared from disasters. Their homes stood when others crumbled. Their bodies were healed when others fell sick. Their spirits remained strong when fear overtook the world. And then, I saw something even greater. People uniting in prayer. Their voices joining together, forming something unstoppable. An unbreakable chain of light stretching across the world. This is how they will stand, Jesus said. Not by might, not by power, but by my spirit. Suddenly I understood the war over oil, the collapse of nations, the deception. It was all meant to break people, to make them feel powerless. But they weren't powerless. They just needed to remember who they were and whose they were. Jesus placed his hand on my shoulder. Now go. Tell them. And in an instant, I was falling, rushing back into my body, gasping for air, feeling the crushing weight of the physical world again. I was alive, but I was no longer the same. The moment I started falling, I knew I was returning, leaving behind the warmth of Jesus' presence, the divine light, the truth that had been revealed to me. It wasn't painful, but it was sudden, like being pulled through a tunnel at unimaginable speed. Then, all at once, I slammed back into my body. The shock was overwhelming. My chest burned, my limbs ached, my head felt like it had been crushed under an unbearable weight. Voices, urgent, panicked, the beeping of medical equipment. "She's back!" someone shouted. "She's breathing!" I gasped, my lungs struggling for air. Light, harsh, fluorescent, blinding. I groaned, feeling the heaviness of my body. Nothing like the weightless existence I had just left behind. A doctor leaned over me, his face filled with disbelief. "Caroline, can you hear me?" I tried to speak. My throat was dry. I could only nod weakly. "You were gone," he said, shaking his head. 13 minutes. We were about to call it. 13 minutes. But it had felt like an eternity. I had seen things that words couldn't describe, felt truths that no journalist had ever uncovered. And now, I was back. Forced to exist in a world that suddenly felt dull, heavy, limited. Tears filled my eyes, not from pain, but because I knew. The world wasn't ready for what was coming, but I had to warn them. The days after my return felt strange. My body was healing, but my mind was somewhere else. Doctors, nurses, staring at me like a miracle. They couldn't believe I was alive. But I knew the truth. I had come back for a reason. "You should have severe brain damage," the neurologist told me. "After 13 minutes with no oxygen, this doesn't make sense." But to me, it did, because I hadn't been gone. I had been somewhere far more real than here. As soon as I was strong enough, I asked for a notepad. My fingers trembled as I wrote, frantically, desperately, capturing everything I had seen. The visions, the warnings, the words of Jesus. I wrote like my life depended on it, because in a way, it did. Then came the hardest part, telling people. At first, I only shared it with my closest friends. Their reactions were mixed. Some believed instantly, sensing the conviction in my voice. Others were skeptical, assuming my brain had manufactured hallucinations from trauma. But I knew the truth. I couldn't keep this to myself. The visions weren't just for me. They were meant for the world. So I started sharing. I wrote articles. I spoke with people I trusted. But every time I told my story, I saw the same thing. Fear. Fear of the idea that the world could change overnight. Fear that control could be stripped away. Fear that deception was already at work. For some, it was too much to accept. And yet, some listened. Some knew, deep inside, that I was telling the truth. That's when I realized not everyone will believe, but those who do will be prepared. So now I'm writing this to you, because time is running out. Everything I saw is already unfolding. The warnings weren't vague. They were specific. The collapse of the US oil industry, the rise of hidden powers, the deception that will blind millions. It's happening now. But Jesus didn't show me these things to spread fear. He showed me so I could spread truth. The world is being prepared for something massive. Many will be caught off guard. They will believe the lies. They will submit to control. they will fall into fear. But those who listen, who see beyond what they're being told, will endure. This is not just a political or economic crisis. This is a spiritual war. Those who rely on governments and systems will be left empty-handed. But those who rely on faith, prayer, and truth will stand strong. Jesus told me, they must wake up. They must prepare. So I ask you, will you listen? Will you prepare? This message is not for everyone. But if it's reaching you, if something inside you is stirring, if you just know, then it was meant for you. Pray, stay vigilant, seek truth, and above all, do not be afraid, because no matter how dark the world becomes, light always wins. Caroline. The days after my return felt surreal. I was alive, breathing, but I wasn't the same person who had started that day before the accident. My body was here, but my mind still felt connected to what I had seen. The hospital smelled sterile. The machines beeped, a constant reminder that I had been clinically dead. But what haunted me more was the knowledge that life as we knew it was about to change. I tried to slip back into normalcy. But how could I? How could I return to daily routines, casual conversations, reporting the news, when I had seen the future unravel before my eyes? How could I write about mundane politics, when I had seen world power shifting in ways no one was ready for? Friends and colleagues visited me. Some were kind, some were curious, but a few asked questions I wasn't sure I was ready to answer. So you actually died? A fellow journalist, Mark, leaned in as if I were about to tell him a secret. Yes. And you saw something? I hesitated. Yes. Mark chuckled nervously. So what? A bright light? Some kind of hallucination? No, I said firmly. It was real, more real than here. His smile faded. He could tell I wasn't joking. I wanted to tell him everything, but I could already see it in his eyes. The doubt, the hesitation. Some people weren't ready. Some people never would be. But I had to try. As soon as I was discharged from the hospital, I began writing. My hands shook as I typed. My mind replayed the visions over and over. Every moment I wasted, the world moved closer to the chaos I had seen. I reached out to my editor. I had to tell the truth. An investigative piece on OPEC, the shifting oil markets, and the growing energy crisis. You're onto something, Caroline. My editor leaned forward, eyes sharp with curiosity. I've been hearing whispers about massive policy changes coming soon. But what's your angle? I hesitated. I couldn't exactly say, Jesus told me in a vision that the U.S. oil industry is collapsing forever. Instead, I replied, there's more going on than people realize. I need to dig deeper. He nodded. Go for it. At first, it was business as usual. Calls, research, digging through documents. But then, I noticed something unsettling. People were afraid to talk. I reached out to an industry insider I had worked with before, someone who usually had no problem speaking off the record. This time, his voice was different. Tense, guarded. Caroline, you need to stop asking questions. A cold weight settled in my chest. Why? Something's happening. Big shifts. Permanent shifts. And the higher-ups don't want it exposed. What do you mean? I pressed. He hesitated. There are meetings happening that no one knows about. Plans being made. If you push too hard, you might not like what you find. I swallowed hard. He didn't know how much I had already seen. I wasn't afraid for myself. I was afraid for the people still blind to what was coming. So I started sharing my testimony with anyone who would listen. Some people nodded, as if they had already sensed a shift deep inside. Others dismissed me, rolling their eyes, chalking it up to trauma-induced hallucinations. But I knew what I had seen. And so, I kept going. I spoke at small gatherings, church groups, online forums, Then, one night, an email arrived. Subject: urgent message. You're not alone. We know what you saw. We've seen it too. You need to move carefully. Not everyone wants this message to get out. A chill ran down my spine. Up until that moment, I had assumed this was just a spiritual battle. But now, I understood. There were earthly forces that didn't want the truth revealed either. That's when I realized Jesus' warning wasn't just about a coming collapse. It was about the need for people to prepare, spiritually, mentally, physically, because what was coming would change everything.